The grip tightened on the wheel. As the closing laps of the Quaker State 400 wound down, a car wobbled ahead, threatening to collect the entire field. Bubba Wallace lifted off the throttle in that exact instant, the only move that made sense. I did the only thing I could do. The move looked completely defensible in real time. A driver avoiding disaster, not chasing an advantage. Then the radio crackled with 4 words no driver ever wants to hear. Penalty under review. Before anyone could process what that meant for the finishing order, a far bigger question was already forming. One that had nothing to do with rulebooks and everything to do with expectations. Expectations tied directly to one man wearing 2 very different hats. Denny Hamlin, co-owner and veteran competitor, was about to face his most uncomfortable collision yet. What happened next didn't just decide where Wallace finished that night. It reopened a conversation nobody inside the garage wanted to say out loud. If you're chasing every twist before it breaks anywhere else, that's exactly what NASCAR Shock Zone is built around. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers, and every subscription helps us keep digging into stories like this one first. Now, back to the story. The Wallace-Hamlin relationship didn't begin with tension. Hamlin was one of Wallace's earliest and loudest believers, standing behind him through rough seasons and public criticism that would have buried a lesser partnership. Alongside co-owner Michael Jordan, the two built 2311 Racing from an ambitious startup into one of the fastest rising organizations in the Cup Series, with Wallace as the undisputed face of that rise. But the fight has fundamentally changed shape. It is no longer Wallace and Hamlin standing together against outside doubters. It is now Wallace measured against sky-high internal expectations. Expectations Hamlin himself now represents as an owner. When 2311 entered the Cup Series, simply belonging was considered a win. That standard no longer exists. Race-winning cars, championship-caliber equipment, expanding operations, and growing demands from manufacturer Toyota have replaced it entirely. Inside the garage, the conversation isn't about progress anymore. It's about execution, every single weekend. The penalty itself came down to NASCAR Section 8.7.2 today, which states, passing below the double-painted lines to advance position will result in a black flag. On the final lap, Wallace took the white flag in third position behind Ryan Blaney and Carson Hocevar. Down the backstretch, he darted to the bottom, went below the double yellow line, and created a 3-wide battle for the lead. Blaney ultimately won. Christopher Bell finished second. Hocevar third. Wallace crossed the line second, or so he believed. Post-race review confirmed he had gained track position below the line. The result, dropped from second to 29th, last car on the lead lap, a brutal 27-point swing on the finish alone. Wallace didn't stay quiet. The rule says advancing your position. I didn't advance my position. I was on the brakes, trying to avoid wrecking everybody. I disagree with the penalty, he stated directly. He insisted he stayed third from corner entry until Ty Gibbs shoved him forward, and that his car didn't like that move, physical evidence he wasn't gaining ground. Wallace, crew chief Charles Denike, and director of competition Dave Rogers walked to the NASCAR hauler for a 31-minute meeting. The ruling stood. Wallace's final word, a penalty is a penalty. What followed shifted the story further. Wallace later admitted he had misunderstood the rule entirely. I always thought it was about getting position, but it's actually about gaining track position, which I did. He also revealed, I thought they would care about the data showing I tried to give the position back, but the damage was already done. NASCAR's position was clear. The violation occurred the moment track position was gained. Returning to position didn't erase the infraction. Wallace also noted that without Ty Gibbs' shove at the line, he likely finishes third and possibly faces no penalty at all. Journalist Jordan Biani observed that the rule was applied correctly on paper, but the human moment behind it is what kept the story burning. Hamlin's response became the story's defining moment. Bubba made the move he felt he had to make in the moment. I also understand NASCAR enforcing the rule as it's written. Consistency matters, Hamlin said. Notably, there was no public attack on NASCAR. Notably, there was no throwing Wallace under the bus. It was a carefully constructed, dual-sided response. Yahoo Sports framed it as reflective of Hamlin's unique position, supporting his driver as co-owner while simultaneously acknowledging the value of consistent officiating as a veteran competitor. Reporter Jeff Gluck called it an interesting balance. Hamlin backing his driver as co-owner while recognizing NASCAR's need for consistent enforcement as a veteran of the sport. But beneath that balance, a deeper question quietly took shape. Has Hamlin's leadership style shifted? From the owner who once shielded Wallace from outside criticism, to the owner now overseeing a team expected to win championships every single weekend? Fans weren't nearly as measured as Hamlin was, and their reaction told a very different story. Voices split immediately. One argued that Wallace literally lifted off the throttle, questioning how a driver gets penalized for trying to avoid a multi-car crash. Another defended Hamlin, noting that defending your driver doesn't always require attacking officials. A third pointed out that championship-level teams face a different standard, that every mistake at 23:11 becomes national news simply because of the combined spotlight surrounding Hamlin, Jordan, and Wallace, leaving no margin for quiet moments. A sharper take cut deeper. Hamlin's leadership has genuinely evolved. Early 23:11 was about building Wallace's confidence. Current 23:11 is about delivering results every single weekend. The bigger question isn't whether Wallace leaves 23:11. It's whether the expectations inside the organization have become nearly impossible for any driver to satisfy. A final voice reminded fans there is zero verified evidence Wallace is leaving, insisting that pressure was being confused with internal conflict. Toyota issued a statement expressing pride in the 23:11 effort and commitment to keep fighting. Yet that corporate show of unity only deepened, rather than resolved, fan unease. No other organization in the garage operates under this level of constant national attention. Michael Jordan's ownership guarantees headlines. Hamlin's outspoken personality guarantees headlines. Wallace remains one of the most recognized and discussed drivers in the sport. Sponsors expect visibility. Toyota expects championship-level execution. Every organizational improvement raises the bar further for every driver in uniform. Meanwhile, Wallace has finished outside the top 20 in 6 of the last 9 events, sits 13th in the regular season standings, just 55 points above the cut line, and lost 22 points to the Chase cut line at Echo Park alone. Not safe. Not comfortable. Many inside NASCAR are quietly asking whether that invisible pressure could eventually become harder to carry than the competition itself. To be clear, there is no verified evidence Wallace plans to leave 23:11 because of Hamlin. Hamlin has continued complimenting Wallace's growth publicly. But as one perspective rightly noted, documentaries aren't driven by confirmed conflict. They're driven by unanswered questions. 2 questions now define everything. What happens when a driver spends years carrying enormous expectations, while every setback becomes a national conversation? And what happens when winning stops being celebrated as a breakthrough and starts being expected as the minimum? On one side sits Hamlin's demanding leadership, honest over combative, exactly what a championship organization requires. On the other sits Wallace, a driver whose every interview, every radio call, and every strategy decision is now dissected for hidden meaning. The biggest shifts in this sport rarely start with an official announcement. They start with quiet questions inside the garage, long before anyone admits what's really happening. This channel, NASCAR Shock Zone, is brand new, and we're genuinely working hard to build something real here. If this breakdown gave you value, a like and a subscribe would mean everything as we push toward 2,000 subscribers. We're doing this because we love this sport and these stories deserve to be told properly. Share this with a NASCAR fan who needs to weigh in. This is a real conversation, not just a video. More breakdowns are coming, and you'll want to be here first. Now drop a comment below and tell us straight. Is the pressure inside 23:11 built by Hamlin's championship standards? Or does it simply come with driving for a team owned by Michael Jordan? Which side do you land on? Let's hear it.